All right, so I do want to talk about the Trinnov. I ended up going to Audio Advice Live, and they had multiple different rooms that had a Trinnov in it. And it's a couple of things I want to talk about that I think you're not gonna hear with a lot of these home theater enthusiasts that may be tied in with dealers and maybe tied in with Trinnov. So then I gotta tell you, from a consumer standpoint, exactly what a consumer may have an issue with Trinnov and what they may actually like about Trinnov. You know what I'm saying? Like, they'll tell you little things that people like about it, but not really, the whole scope of like a real like review of it, right? So I ended up going to Audio Advice Live, and they now, mind you, I have I'm very familiar with a lot of processors and receivers. I've had Yamaha A2A, Denon 940, then moved to Denon 3800H. I still have the 3800H. I had a Cinema 50. I sold that. I've got MRX, an Anthem MRX 1140 that's in the house. And here I've got a processor, Anthem AVM90. In my bedroom in the house, I've got Onkyo RZ50. So I'm very familiar with different sound signatures of different processors and receivers, right? So from different brands, how they sound, how they perform, all of that, right? I've heard Storm Audio at a bunch of different trade shows, and I heard Trinnov before, but I think it was last year at Audio Advice Live, but it was only in one room, and I heard it for, I think it was like maybe one demo, so I couldn't really put my hand on exactly what was good about it and what I didn't like about it. Other than like the panning was like really smooth, because I think they used the Altitude 32 during that demo, right? And this year in 2025 Audio Advice, they used two Altitude 32s, right? And this is kind of going to sound similar to Altitude 16 is what I'm hearing, other than obviously the 32's got more channels. This depends on your room, what you're going to need. And one of the rooms that had the Altitude 32, they only had, I think it was like a 7-channel bass layer, and then they had like 4 Atmos like channels at the top, so they didn't really utilize all of the surrounds or anything like that. So it would probably represent close to what Altitude 16 would do. And the other room, I think they use I think two side surrounds, and then they had the rears, and then they had the the LCRs like in the front, and then they had 4 height channels, and then I think they had multiple different subwoofers. They had some subwoofers in the front and the back because they did waveforming. So my journey is, I'm looking for endgame, right? So I went from the Anthem 1140, and then I'm just like, I'm hearing that maybe I should go separates, and what's the deal with separates? Is it less distortion? Like, what am I gonna hear? Is it more sound separation? What's going on? Because I felt like the MRX 1140 Anthem was very, very good. It gave you a good cinematic sound, very good, right? So then I moved to the AVM90, which is the top of the line Anthem processor, and I think they retail for like 7,500, but I think they got a deal right now to where they're running for like 5,900 or 6,300 if I'm not mistaken, for a short period of time. I ended up buying mine through a dealer. I got a pretty good deal on it. But I'm like, yo, should I move from an Anthem AVM90 to a Trinnov, right? Because this is in-game. You hear a lot of these different YouTubers stressing like how great the Trinnov is. Now, when I started to do research, I'm gonna tell you like how I feel like it sounds in a minute. When I started to do research on the Trinnov, I started to learn different things, like, it uses a actual computer instead of just having everything like just on one chip, like basic processors and receivers do. It's got like a computer to where it can be upgraded. So you don't have to buy a whole new unit. You could just get software updates and, maybe add on to it and things like that, but continue to keep the same unit. One of the Trinnovs that I've seen was like a very old unit, and it was kind of modernized, so it was like a silverish unit, like kind of like a pewter color almost, not like the standard colors of the Trinnovs now. And from what the guy said, I think he said it was like high up, like not the VP, but like somebody high up at Trinnov, And he was saying like it's basically going to sound the same as a brand new one because it's been modernized, but he couldn't tell me which DACs it had inside of it. So one of the Trinnovs, the guy ran Spider-Man, I think it was a Spider-Man, the one with Jake Gyllenhaal in it, where he's like Mysterio, and you can hear like when I think it's the illusion scene when Jake Gyllenhaal finally gets into it with Spider-Man, and you can hear like the sound from Jake Gyllenhaal's voice just like going all around, and how deep, and clear and airy like his voice was put on display with the Trinnov. And I'm listening to it, it's like, oh man, this sounds amazing. It's phenomenal, right? So then they were using a kaleidoscope, which I have a kaleidoscope myself. I've got a Strato V, I've got a kaleidoscope. And they were switching scenes, right? The guy was switching the scenes. So I think first he started with A Star Is Born. They try to open up the demos with that, The Star Is Born. It's like one that everybody uses. I don't really like the demo, but, they want to show off that the processor can be musical. And it did sound like pretty musical. It sounded pretty good. One thing you can hear with The Star Is Born is when Lady Gaga was pressing on the ivory keys or pressing on the keys on the piano, you can hear when the key releases. So I thought that was cool because a lot of processors cannot emulate that or reproduce that sound, right? Because you got different layers of sound, right? Some have better DACs than others, depending on circuitry, components, all of that. What can actually make it to the speaker? I think the Trinnov did a really good job. You can hear just about everything. Her vocals came across very clean, clear, deep, and dynamic. And then you had, like I said, her moving around. You can hear her fingers moving across the keys, which I think was dope. You know what I mean? But obviously Lady Gaga, I don't believe she was singing. Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't. I think she was lip singing it. But everything else, like, you can hear. And I thought that was cool. And they moved to the Spider-Man demo. Then they had the movie 13 Hours. They played a demo of that. One thing immediately that I did not like about the Trinnov, this is what people do not want to talk about. Even at Trinnov, they don't want to talk about this. All right. When the guy was going in between scenes using the kaleidoscope, there was a 5 to 7 second delay before you can even hear the audio. Like, you would see the movie running, but there would be no sound. And so, like, it happened so many times, like, because I think he played like 5 demos or something, and it kept happening, and I went there specifically to listen to the Trinnov because I'm like, should I upgrade from an Anthem AVM90 to a Trinnov or not? So I listened to these demos quite a few times, and it was the same thing, like from this one particular room before, we went to the next room. And I asked him, I'm like, what's up with that delay? I just said it in front of everybody. And everybody's like, yeah, that's kind of, ridiculous. Because this thing is an Altitude 32. What is it, like $30-something thousand? Or something along the 42 or $30-something thousand, something along the lines of that. That's a lot of money to miss out on that much audio when you're trying to play a movie. And, the guy was trying to say, oh, well, when you first start like a disc or you start a movie, you're going to see like the movie studio logos and all of that, if you pop a disc in. But I'm like, yeah, but what if you like starting like Netflix or something? You know what I'm saying? Obviously you won't hear the bum bum like from the Netflix, but maybe it's something that you may need to hear because some tracks like start early with different information, right? Like, from one Mad Max Fury Road, like when it first starts, like you can hear like the noises and everything, you know what I mean? I think it's like the whispering or whatever from whatever's going on. Mad Max showing off the Atmos, and a lot of movies, even I think the John Wicks. A lot of movies like start out wanting you to hear like how great the audio is about to sound, and you will literally miss that with the Trinnov. And for that price tag, that is unacceptable. Yes, like once it's playing, it's good. It sounds great. It's pushing very subtle sound cues forward. Kind of like if you hear like a pin dropping, right, in the background. it'll push that forward. Kind of like an Anthem AVM90, but it, you know, it may push it forward just a little bit more and make it a little bit more clear, right? But I have to miss so much. Like, and people don't understand. Like, what if you're playing a song? Like, you might want to play a song and then you're missing 5 to 7 seconds of a song. This is some of the things that they are not telling you. These dealers are not going to say anything about that. When I went on a Facebook forum and a Trinnov forum and I talked about this, I said, this, like, what is up with this delay? A bunch of dealers jumped in the comments and like, oh, it's no big deal. That's a big deal. You know, and one person kept it real. They're like, well, I have a Trinnov and it is a problem because sometimes I have to rewind, you know, like, let's just say you jump to scene 3 in a movie, like one of your favorite scenes that may have like a demo material, whatever. And, you know, before it starts, you have to like rewind it to the previous scene at least 10 seconds before the audio kicks in to right when the scene is supposed to start. You know, 5 to 7 seconds. Sometimes it's like 10 seconds before the audio starts. That is ridiculous. And the guy tried to tell me, well, we use an actual computer. You know what I mean? So it takes time for everything to, you know, sync to, and that's where you get like a longer delay. Well, maybe you guys need to use a faster processor. We got like video game consoles like PlayStation 5s and, you know, Xboxes and, you know, even my Anthem AVM90 or 1140, I get a small delay, like a 1, maybe 2 second delay before the audio kicks in, you know, because it's like it's trying to sync everything. But other than that, like, that's it. I do not get like some 5 to 10 second delay in audio. That is unacceptable. You know, like, no, like, don't let these theater people out here like just use these YouTube channels to gaslight y'all to make y'all think that something's wrong with y'all. Like, y'all should be accepting this. No, like, that is not cool at all for that price. Even the Altitude 16 is what, like 18 grand. And, you know, the Anthem AVM90 is 7,500. So this thing is like twice the price of the AVM90 and I'm missing sound. No, that's not okay. So then I went into another room that was next to the Kaleidoscapes. They had Altitude 32. They had the Martin Logan speakers and they played like a few demos. And there it did the same thing. Major delay. You know, when he would jump a scene through the Kaleidoscape, it would be like you would see the movie running, but there would be no sound for like 10 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds. Sometimes it was 5 seconds, sometimes it was 10 seconds, sometimes it was 7 seconds. That is unacceptable, period. You know, and we got to get to the point as home theater enthusiasts to where we draw the line, like, you know, we have to be real. You know, some people will try to sell things that are not worth it. You know what I mean? Like, or will give you either diminishing returns, or you're going to get into a situation where you're going to be having buyer's remorse. I feel like if I bought a Trinnov, I would have buyer's remorse immediately. If I got home and started watching a movie, and I have a Kaleidoscape. So what that means is I'm not going to have any of the movie logos before the movie starts, none of that. You know how they make you sit through the FBI warnings? I have none of that. It's just the movie just starts playing. That's the beautiful thing about the Kaleidoscape. That's what I love about it. I'm gonna tell you what I like about it and what I don't in a different video. That's one of the things I love about it. But you mean to tell me I'm gonna miss material? Or if I'm watching a streaming network, a movie or a show on a streaming network, I'm gonna miss audio? Unacceptable. Now, as far as the audio quality, like I said, it was very, very good. Now, waveforming. The big thing about waveforming is that they try to stop standing waves before they happen, right? Because they don't, you know, once you get a big wave that's corner loading a corner, it's difficult to get rid of it because now you're worried about decay and like multiple different things when you're dealing with bass. So they try to do waveforming so that they can mitigate that, or instead of mitigating it, preventing it from happening in the first place. But I was still hearing breakup of the room. You know, so it's like in my rooms, like when I'm listening to something, the calibration on Arc Genesis is so good to where you know, I almost don't hear breakup in the room. Like in the house, I've got PB4000s, like dual PB4000s. They're big, you know, and they don't, you know, depending on if how hot I'm running them, right? But it's, you know, I barely even hear any. The only thing I hear is vibration, like when the subs, you know, in the room get down to 10 hertz, then like things are vibrating. But other than that, like I'm not hearing like breakup of the room. And the Trinnov still had breakup of the room. So it's just like, yo, this bass isn't really even controlled like you guys are marketing. So then I'm watching, like, because, you know, Cydia is coming up. Cydia 2025 is coming up next month and in September. So I'm like, maybe, you know, should I go to Cydia? I don't know. And I'm listening to people talk about the Trinnov, like, and like, oh, well, you know, we're adding this feature, but you got to go to a dealer to get, you know, for them to put this on there. And it's like, this is becoming, one, a money pit. Because if you are running like 13 channels, this thing is a 16 channel processor, altitude 16. So if you're running 13 channels and you want 4 subwoofers, you're going to have to get an external DAC in order to run like 4 subwoofers, and you're paying $18,000. This is crazy, guys. You know, it's ridiculous. My AVM90 runs 4 subwoofers independently, and it's $7,500. You know what I mean? You can get it on sale for like $6,900. You know, and my Denon 3800H has 4 independent subwoofer outs. You know, and my Cinema 50 I had 4 independent subwoofer outs. You mean to tell me I'm giving you $18,000 and I have to buy an external DAC to be able to use 4 subwoofers? And then when they're used and it's supposedly calibrated with that mic that they use with Trinnov, it's still, you're hearing breakup. I should not hear that room reacting to the bass for that amount of money at all. You know, so that was one of my like biggest like takeaways from it. And it wasn't just that room, it's the other room, you know, you can kind of hear the bass, like the room reacting to it as well. And it's just like, this is supposed to have the best calibration there is. Like, why is this? Right? Now, as far as subtleties in the tracks, you know, when I got home, obviously each place is going to have different speakers, right? So I got home and I ran the first thing I did was ran the Spider-Man movie, right, with Mysterio. And the AVM90 sounded very close to the Trinnov. The only difference is with the Trinnov, I think it was just like maybe 1 or 2 sounds was a little bit more forward. And, you know, they have a little bit more customization with the Trinnov. And maybe the calibration in terms of everything else besides subwoofers, maybe it's a little bit better and more how, you know, it moves speakers or whatever. But, you know, like the waves or whatever. But, you know, it just maybe like, you know, maybe a sound or two just wasn't as forward. Everything was there. This wasn't as forward as the Trinnov. But for the most part, I would say 98% the AVM90 is there. You know, so like you're talking about serious diminishing returns moving to a Trinnov. You know, and unless you want to pay a dealer to come in and just have them keep tweaking and calibrating things. And I did not see, like, me and my girl was sitting, we were like, what's the point of getting a Trinnov? She was like, your system sounds as good as this. You know, it's about the same, you know, if not like, you know, if not the same, it's close. And I even had her like, when I ran the Spider-Man, I'm like, do you hear any difference? And she's like, I don't really hear any, like much of a difference. She said, I think that Anthem is like better than, you know, I mean, everybody knows it's good, but she's like, I think it's better than that, you know, what people think. You know, and I'm like, well, you know, Anthem is like kind of like an end game for people. You know, Anthem, you know, Storm Audio, Trinnov, all of that. But she's like, for that price, no, I would get the Anthem 100% over the Trinnov. Unless you need like dual side surrounds or, you know what I mean, or triple side surrounds, or altitude 32 or something like that. If you don't need that, there's no reason why, you know, you would want to. And what they try to sell you on is like, oh, with the Trinnov, we get like the dedicated Atmos chip. And, you know, it's not like a regular, you know, it's not, you know, something that's soldered on to, you know, the board, like all these other you know, they try to sell you on it. But it's like, yo, I didn't hear really anything different besides like maybe one or two far away sounds that was pushed forward just a little bit. I'm sorry, y'all. I just cannot. I don't understand, bro. I'm sitting here trying to figure out why I should say the Trinnov is better than the Anthem, and I can't. Other than it has more options. You know, so I don't know. Y'all tell me what y'all think in the comment section. I mean, we could listen to Shane Lee's reviews of the, you know what I mean, the Trinnov and, you know, like, Haterade and whatever they reviewing the Trinnov and talking about it. I mean, I think Haterade's got like a free unit for, I think, a few months or something like that. Shane Lee, obviously, I'm sure he's got a discount on his Trinnov for talking about it. You know, but when you see these YouTube channels with all of these subscribers, you're gonna be like, oh, okay, well, maybe they're telling you the truth. But I don't know. I did not hear much of a difference. You know what I mean? Other than I think the AVM90 is a slightly brighter sound than the Trinnov. The Trinnov is a little deeper, like, you know what I'm saying, than the AVM90. And I feel like music sounds better on the AVM90 than it does the Trinnov. You know, so, and I don't know. You know, maybe it's just I have grown accustomed to the Anthem sound. I don't know. You know, but all in all, I thought that, you know, when they ran at 13 hours, right, the movie 13 hours, I was like, okay, like when you would hear like a bullet, you know, like a gun going off, right, and a bullet or whatever, it's deep, right? And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's like, because it's more percussive, you know, it's like a really deep sound, right, and controlled deep sound. But then I went home and I listened to my Anthem. I'm like, yo, it's like the same almost. Now, if I go to my Denon 3800H, the Trinnov smokes it, wipes the floor with it. Or if I'm going off memory of my Marantz Cinema 50, the Trinnov wipes the floor with it, but so does my Anthem AVM90. And you know what I mean? Like, it wipes the floor with it. So a lot of this is, you know, I'm starting to wonder, you know, because home theater is kind of dissipating a little bit. Because, you know, the people with the money, you know, like people 60 years old and stuff, like a lot of those people are having like hearing problems and stuff, and they're not really buying, you know, some people are buying stuff just to buy it, but a lot of people can't really appreciate things for the sound quality aspect because their hearing is like going. And you even hear some of these people who do reviews complain that their hearing is not the same, but these guys are telling you what sounds good. And then when you're there at these conventions, you see these people, they're in bed with the dealers, you know, so it's, I don't know what to believe when it comes to home theater anymore, but I would say Anthem AVM90 and Trinnov is very close, very close. In terms of feature set, you're going to have way more features with the Trinnov. Are you going to use those features? You know, or do you want, like, you know, a software that's going to, you calibrate it and you set it and that's it? You know, and then, you know, you can tweak the Arc Genesis, go to advanced mode. You can tweak it all day long. You know, but it just depends on what you want to do. But if I'm listening to that Trinnov and then listening, and then they had an Anthem room right next to the Trinnov room. So we were going back and forth, like listening to the Trinnov and going in and listening to the Anthem. And it was like, it was so close. And a lot of instances, actually, the Anthem sounded better. Like when they would play John Wick 4, I think it was, like, it was just so much more clear. Like the Trinnov was slightly, it's like it mixed the cinematic and clear sound cohesively. Right, so it's like almost a deeper sound, where it's like the Anthem was just clear, holographic. You know what I mean? Like, it's how I felt like when I would bounce from room, and I'm like, yo, like, am I bugging? And she was like, no, like this Anthem sounds like, I don't know if it's the speakers they're using or whatever, but the Anthem sounds better than that Trinnov. You know, and in certain situations, you know what I mean? So I don't know, like I was perplexed a little bit, like trying to figure out a way to, you know, to say that the Trinnov was better, but I can't. Even when you like and this is what I should have learned, right? So, you know, Trinnov, you can download Trinnov demos, right? And I've got a Kaleidoscape, so you can just download them for free. If you listen to those Trinnov demos, the bass is bloated. It's not really giving you much detail with the Trinnov demos. It doesn't even sound as good as the Atmos demo disc, like the Trinnov demos. And I'm like, why are people raving about these demos and they don't even sound good? So I listened to the Trinnov demos before I even went out there, and I'm like, and then when I listened to the Trinnovs, I'm like, all right, you know what I mean? Like, this is just a money pit. It's designed to just get you to spend as much money as you can. You know, and just so you can say you have the best of the best. Because when you compare that thing to an Anthem AVM90, it's close. And I even seen a guy do, and this is probably one of the realest guys on YouTube. I can't remember his name, but he did a comparison between the Trinnov and the Anthem AVM90. And I had similar thoughts to his. Like, you know, it was so close. You know, the Trinnov may have been better at maybe one or two sounds, pushing forward a little bit, but other than that, it's so close. It is not worth spending the extra money. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Y'all tell me what y'all think down in the comment section. I'm out, y'all. Peace.